I'm back to my same old ways. I swear I try to change. You just feel so right when I do wrong. So right along.
Welcome to the final episode of season 1 of Harder Than Healing. Episode 10. This is Scenes from the Rat Park. I'm Jason Lemire. I'm the playwright.
I'm Nathaniel, and I'm the clinician.
I'm Donald Malloy, the Green Beret.
All right. We have an amazing guest today. We have an amazing show today. Here's a kickoff question. And one MC, this one's for you too. What is a movie or a play or a TV show that gets it right? Whatever the it is, it just captures it accurately. What do you think?
The Usual Suspects.
Go on.
The last scene where Spacey straightens out, starts walking, and then all of a sudden you put it all together and you're like, oh, I gotta watch that one again.
I have a flood of movies that are coming to my head. I'm thinking of the guy who jumps up and kicks the guy in the chest and says, "This is Sparta." I mean, that shit's playing out in my head. What is that, 100? 300. There you go. See, I knew I was going to fuck that up. That's what I want to say. But the other one is Braveheart. And the other one is Band of Brothers. What's the other one? Saving Private Ryan.
I was going there.
I mean, a lot of those are coming to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the beginning of some of those movies was mind-blowing.
And you feel like you're there and you're watching that and you're like, yep, that is what it feels like. That's it.
Well, I mean, I've never seen some shit like that, but that was real. And there was another one. I was watching a movie just recently, and oh gosh, what was it? It's about Saudi Arabia. It's called The Kingdom. And at the very beginning, there's this terrorist attack, and they blow something up, and then there's this kids running around in a park, and they also get killed. And I remember boom, stopped it. And I was like, can't do this anymore. And I was like, that shit was right at the core. It was intense.
Wow.
And I have energy today, so that feels appropriate.
Yep. God, Mike, one MC. Tiffany, what do you think?
I'm going to go with Reign Over Me with Adam Sandler and Don Cheadle, because it speaks to the most horrible trauma and grief and loss. But even in the midst of a super sad movie, it also speaks to connection and the importance of having a support system.
Nice. I think for me, it's, you guys remember Lean On Me?
Oh, it's a
Of
classic.
course.
That's a
The
movie.
opening, yeah.
Everything about that movie, that there would be times when it was a Sunday night and I knew I had to go teach the next morning, and I loved teaching, but I had been pulling 100-hour weeks or whatever, trying to get ready for the play, and I just felt my energy lagging, and I would put on the last 15 minutes of that movie, and just the way the movie captures how passionate teachers are and how passionate the drive can be, because you know the difference you're making. Man, that movie gets it for me. So we have a very different episode today, right? We have a really special guest. I'm really excited for you guys to get to meet her. It's my friend Janessa, who is an actress and also one of the people who I go to most often in Denver when I've got a new creative project and I'm looking for creative feedback. So today is the day that I, the playwright, am going to pitch you guys and also listeners. I'm pitching you on concepts for one-act plays that have come out of season 1 of Harder Than Healing.
I'm looking forward to this.
My mind's kind of blown. Trying to figure out in my head
Right?
what this is really going to be.
Yeah.
Good.
Pretty entertaining.
All right, here we go. I hope so. So we're going to take a really quick break. And when we come back, Janessa Ho will be in the hot seat and we're going to get after it.
All Points North is the official sponsor of the Harder Than Healing podcast. APN offers custom mental health, trauma, and addiction treatment programs at APN Lodge in Colorado. Visit apn.com to learn more.
All right, here we are. We're back. And we've got a new friend in the hot seat.
What's up?
It's Janessa Ho, everybody. Janessa, can you tell our listeners how we met, how you know me?
You forgot?
This is so
gonna be
embarrassing.
fun.
How do we know each other?
I didn't even recognize her in the parking lot. That was bad.
I think it was like, was it 2018? 2019?
I think it was 18, yeah.
Okay, it was pre-COVID.
Yep.
I decided to do the 48-hour film project, which I had never done before. He's looking at Do we have that in common too?
Yes.
That's wild.
Oh,
Malibu Keith.
We've lived the same life.
Malibu Keith is all about the 48-hour film festival.
This is the happiest I've seen Malibu Keith the entire time we've been doing this.
It's the only time I did it. It was super fun. We should do it again.
We should do it again.
But I didn't have a group, and so they had a website, and I think I uploaded my resume, and a few groups reached out to me, and you, hands down, had like the wordiest, most fun email, and I was like, "This guy's crazy! Like, let's do it." And then it was so good. You were such a surprise. Your process in like, I don't know, how you orchestrated everything to figure out who had what strengths and what you wanted to write to. It was real weird, but we nailed it and it was super fun.
We did.
Yeah.
And you should have won Best Actress.
Oh, thanks. Well,
No,
we
you-
won a thing, didn't we?
We
got
did. We won the Audience Choice
Audience
Award.
favorite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for our initial group. That was a good time.
Yeah.
And then, and this is sort of an interesting connection that Janessa and Nathaniel have. I wrote a movie called Invisible Men. And it is something that I hopefully now I'm going to turn into a play. But I needed readers for it, and it was a pretty heavy piece, and a lot of my, really all of my creative collaborators outside of my wife, shout out Coral Jenrette, are all back east. But I really wanted to be able to sit down and like look face to face with people who had read this. And so Janessa and I had bonded doing our film, and Nathaniel, you and I had bonded in the trenches of education. And so you were my first two readers of that film.
It was so good.
It was pretty tasty.
And so yeah. And then we've just been talking shop ever since.
Yeah. I think whenever I have really specific advice I need for like a really specific weird situation, I call you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Because you really get like granular with it.
Right on, man. So, all right, so let's get granular right now. Actually, Janessa, what is a movie or TV show that you think gets it right, that captures something about the human experience?
Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the show, not the movie.
Shout out Coral Jenrette.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, why Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
So from the outside, right, it looks like it's about like fantasy and demons and a bunch of make-believe shit that, you know, who's going to relate to that? But when you watch it, it's all metaphors for what like young adults are going through. Like the demons that they're fighting are literal demons in the show, but then they've got relationships. And because they're, you know, fighting this like hellmouth underworld full of demons while going to high school, they can't tell anybody about what they're going through because people will think they're fucking nuts. And they can't tell their parents. All of the emotions and those like tribulations, super accurate. And then going into college and then not going to college, et cetera. Even the stories from the adults in the show, it gets it right. They do college
I feel like
courses
I'm going
on
to have
it.
to watch this now.
Absolutely you are. A new wave of people are watching it now and like podcasting about it too.
Wrong pipe.
It's true. Oh, that's great. Okay, excellent. So that is a great jumping off point now for the rest of the episode. Episode 10, Scenes from the Rat Park. What I'm going to do, I'm Jason Lemire, the playwright, and I'm going to pitch some plays to the panel here and to our listeners. And so if you want to comment on what you hear today, we've got the way to do that in the show notes. But off we go. I got 10. I'm going to pitch you rapid fire. The first one is the guard dog. And we talked about this metaphor on our anxiety episode, but I'm imagining a guy going through his life as a high schooler, and he has this dog that no one can see but him, and the dog is just constantly giving him these worst case scenarios and raising these red flags. And during the first half of it, it's like a comedy. And it's like, bro, why? Like, come on. And then as it goes along, as his dog becomes more and more difficult to manage, and he tries to suppress the dog and put the dog in a cage and stuff his anxiety down and pretend it's something to be shameful about and pretend that it's something that he has to manage all by himself, then it ends up leading to shame and isolation and more shame and more isolation. It goes down this dark path until he then ultimately has to reconcile with his dog. That's...
Now, wait, is this a play or a...
Yeah, these are all plays. I should have sort of...
No, I think you said it, but I just wanted to be clear, because is the dog being played by a human?
Oh, definitely. Okay. Like the first, again, like the first 15, 20 minutes, we are laughing at someone in a dog costume, and it is very silly.
Well, because there's a movie, right, called Dog. And it's funny because that movie at the beginning is exactly what you're talking about. Puts him in a cage. Have you guys seen the movie Dog?
No.
All I can think about is
So it's a
dog in
veteran
cage.
movie. Yeah.
Like training the dog in the cage.
Yeah. So for those of you who haven't seen it, it's a guy that goes to war, comes back, or I'm sorry, he's killed in combat. His dog comes back, and his dog has got
Oh, yeah,
PTSD.
yeah.
And so this Channing Tatum has to take this dog, and he's trying to get back into Ranger Battalion, but he can't because of a psych profile. And so basically, which would never happen, they're like, hey, just take this dog and we'll say your psych profile is okay. So he has to take this dog across country to get it to his owner's funeral, and then literally cages the dog, locks it up in 100 different ways, and tries to have a social life while he's on the way to this funeral. And along the way, they get really close, and he makes amends with the dog. And the next thing you know, he's in love with the dog. And oh, by the way, now he appreciates himself. So you guys need to watch it. It's good.
It's good.
It's really good.
All right. One for one, dude.
It's the trials and tribulations, right? It's like what happens when you don't take care of your dog? He eats the couch.
Right.
100%.
What happens when you don't take care of your anxiety and
It eats the couch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it was also in that movie, one of the pieces that was huge at the beginning is Channing Tatum, because he's not a soldier at this point, right? He's kind of kicked out of regiment. He's at a Subway, working a Subway, and this kid comes in super entitled and is like, I didn't say fucking tomatoes. Get those tomatoes on my sandwich. And he's like trying to hold his shit together, thinking about like the disrespect that this kid is, putting on him as this guy that gone to battle and come back and whatever else. Now he's making a fucking sandwich, and it's this huge deal. And you can see him have to check his ego. It's intense.
So I'm trying to think of like situations then that would be in the first 15 minutes really like fun and funny, to like the Buffy thing where you're trying to have a normal high school thing.
Right.
But then there's this dog that only you can see.
Uh-huh.
Because others, I'm trying to remember, other shows have definitely done this, but I think they've done it more where the dog is depression or the dog is like a projection. And I really like the idea of the dog being like endearing initially to the audience.
What about the dog as a service dog?
Well, then that's not as silly.
Have you met a service dog before?
Well, let me put it this way.
I got one.
Oh boy. Go on. Here we go.
Oh,
We would like to meet the dog. Please bring him in.
The whole thing hinges on, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is I have to be mindful about how to treat this dog cat. Like the whole play really hinges on the first like 2 minutes. Okay, that's fair.
Well, and I think for me, the service piece is like, because they're connected, right? Like that's a piece of what it is that we've been trying to pull together this whole season is connections across the board. So someone who works with a service dog or who has a service dog, if it's a guide dog, like you're connected to that dog in a very, very real way.
Yeah, but I'm not getting a dog on stage. Like the dog's in his head, right?
well, so that's, I mean, we're playing with a huge metaphor right now.
Janessa's like, yeah, it's in his head.
It's diverging. It's going to, this is 2 plays. Now we have 2.
Now we have 2 plays.
Well,
Okay.
so it's interesting because a service dog, if you implement it correctly or employ it correctly, like, it's going to learn you really well, and it's going to do those things that it can do to support you, right? So this is the antithesis, I think, of what you're talking about,
Right.
because the service dog in your head, right, is going to be, hey, you're anxious right now.
Oh, wait, this
Chill out.
this is interesting. What if the dog comes out and the dog is like putting on one of those service vests and it's like, check it out, I'm official. Like maybe in the second or third
That's
scene,
good.
like, I know you've been annoyed by me, but look, I'm really here for you, buddy. That's really, all right, that's it. We next one. Next
2 hours,
one.
like I said.
All right, here we go. Idea number 2, the downshift. We did talk about survivor's guilt on various episodes. We talked about Greg's story in the tower in Vietnam. We've talked about survivor's guilt throughout, right? One of the things that I think is interesting, I go to these conferences and I meet these kids and they say, I've had students say there are no good plays about survivor's guilt. And I've had kids say this to me who are currently attending schools where school shootings happened, but they happened like 3 years ago, and these kiddos are sophomores. So they weren't in the building when it went down, but they're in a building that has so much trauma in it. And one of the things that I'm interested about exploring, because our young people are so aware of the school shootings that are happening in schools, of the suicides that are happening in their peer groups, I wonder if there is almost a generational survivor's guilt, where I wonder if every kid between the ages of like 11 and 17 right now is carrying a measure of this. What do you guys think of that as something to explore? And Janessa, I sort of want to ask you first. You're making it.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that would be a good survey, first of all, to find out. Because I don't know. I mean, I imagine it's possible, but I wonder how pervasive that is.
Oh, and that's what Nathaniel always says. Just ask him.
Yeah. Let's ask him.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good place to start.
Well, I also think that there's so much of that input from society at large right now, right? Like every day there's another thing that's happened,
Yeah.
whether that's a school shooting, whether that's, somebody's gone postal, as it were, whether that's, the guy on the highway who's just driving through people just because he's done waiting. It reminds me of I'm not going to get it right because I don't have the movie references that you guys have, but he's in LA.
Falling down.
He gets out of the car.
Michael Douglas.
Yes. Thank you.
Yep.
It reminds me of that, where he's like, I'm done.
And I feel like, particularly with social media, kids are, is it inundated or inundated?
Inundated.
They're inundated. And it just seems so exhausting, man.
It's a lot of input.
Well, and it's all noxious. I mean, the input is so bad
Yeah.
that it's difficult to find the sweet spot where you can go back to, oh, this is what it's like to feel grounded. Right? Like, this is what it's like for me to put my toes in the grass.
And I feel like well, for me at least, curating your social media, it's kind of like watching your thoughts, right? Like you have to pay attention to that and be like, this doesn't feel good. Let's get that out of the algorithm, and make sure your feed is clean.
Oh, that's interesting. That algorithm curation is a really interesting thing to get into in a piece like that.
Yeah. Well, I remember a couple of years ago, a bunch of people were complaining about Facebook and how toxic it is. And I was like, sounds like your Facebook sucks. Like, I like mine. Like the things that I follow and the people I'm friends with, like they have interesting, like good things to say. So that's something worth paying attention to,
It's
right?
actually true because I follow Janessa on Facebook and your Facebooks are always like, hey, if you don't have a good song in your head, here's a good song.
I love it.
That's a really interesting interpretation. But I hear that. I posted like a Radiohead live
Yeah.
not too long ago. Maybe that was it. Yeah.
I think maybe that's what's in my head.
But no, it's true. Yeah, you want good stuff coming at you. And I mean, just like people don't think to really pay attention to if their thoughts are serving them and trying to make choices to focus on other things,
Loving that.
Well, and so
It's like you've been here all season, dude.
I
Really?
feel like there's this like, okay, so you talk about the Rat Park,
Yeah.
right? And well, I should say I talk about the Rat Park, and it's in this like title, and I think about the idea of like putting two kind of rat parks side by side, right? And one's one generation and one's another, and you see what the other one feels because of this interaction with all this noxious, content, and then you see the other one with whatever they have, right? And you realize that there's this sense of like it's difficult to even feel happy or excited about, going to these places that you normally go to, by going to the park, right? Because of all the tragedy that happens around you kind of thing. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but there's this generation. I think it's a generational thing that you can absolutely throw in there too. Two different parks.
Well, and for me, it's, as we talk about Facebook, I don't have it.
Right.
The only time that I've had Facebook was when you were deployed. So what you miss if you're not on Facebook, right? Because then people have to like make the extra effort to like,
Stay connected.
right. Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
here's this thing that I posted on Facebook. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. 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 And I think there's a piece of that to like do the generational piece on that, right? Like this is how some people stay connected. This is how other people stay connected. I mean, you can even do that for a deployment, right? Like my deployments at one point, you didn't have cell phones. You didn't have a lot of those ways to reach home. So you would have to stay connected on Facebook. And then as you move forward, even at some point there's sat phones where I could just be on mission and call home if I wanted to, so it's a completely different rat park, so to speak.
Interesting. It's interesting. It's interesting to think about how survivor's guilt can be both an internal experience, but also maybe a communal one.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a piece that we got to with Dogs of War with Steve, where there was the communal experience of, this is my story. This is my experience, and you can't understand this experience unless you've had it. And then to get to that space where, maybe you can experience that, even though you haven't had the same experience.
The trauma is trauma is trauma. All right. So Malibu Keith, as he always does, it's getting obnoxious that you don't have a mic. Malibu Keith with some really good sauce for this. And that is the idea that, when we talked about drowning pools and trauma is trauma, but how we can almost look at someone else's trauma and be like, well, mine can't possibly be that bad because I haven't gone through that. But then that word guilt bubbles up again. Like, how dare I be feeling bad? And it was interesting. Students, at those schools would say, I feel really weird about feeling survivor's guilt because I don't have it like those other kids do, but I clearly have something. And so how do I even put a name on this?
Then they feel guilty for feeling guilty for
Exactly.
something they don't think they should feel guilty
Right.
for.
And
Yeah,
then
that's
it
rough.
becomes this spiral. Okay.
Well, and the school shooting piece and sharing that experience, it's not just the students coming in, even though they haven't been there. Like, even though they weren't there when that happened, a lot of the people in the building were there when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's something we have to pay attention to. Is it's not just you weren't there, and so you don't get to have this guilt. It's you're walking into a building that is filled with this energy.
But when we think about the park, right? If suddenly, particularly with social media, the park is vast. When you're 16 and you're logging on to TikTok or you're whatever. I'm old. Come on, give me a break. I don't know what you do. I don't know what the verbs are.
That's my line for my kids. They're like, Dad, you're old. I'm like, I don't know.
When you enter that space, you're like, I am interacting. I'm interacting with somebody who's lost someone to suicide. Surely I'm interacting with somebody who had their stomach pumped because they tried to go that route. And so I think there's also that thing for teenagers right now of the building, right? You're walking into this building where there's been all this trauma. That's just something to explore. All right, we got it. We're gonna go on. Next
That's a good
idea.
one, though.
Next pitch. Oh, I cannot wait for Donald Malloy to just breathe through this one and agree with everything that I say. Oh, it's gonna be the best. So we had a fantastic guest in here, the absolute sweetheart, Craig Nippenberg. Shout out Craig Nippenberg. And at one point, Craig Nippenberg very casually released a dove into the pod studio here at APN. And Craig said, well, of course, as we know, human beings are a prey species.
I found that dove and killed it.
Didn't even get out of his hand.
And so I, being the curious goose that I am, went and looked up. And sure enough, there's some pretty compelling academic evidence that indicates that we evolved as a prey species, and that's why we evolved to be communal animals. That leans on our intelligence and our ability to work together to survive.
Anxious.
Why we're anxious, right? And meanwhile, when Craig said, all right, everybody, close your eyes and think of something that makes you anxious, I went there immediately. Nathaniel went there eventually, and Malloy was like, I don't get anxious. I eat anxious. And so I want to do a play. I've been thinking like vaguely about gang initiation, but I want to open up to the floor. How can we do a play that explores whether or not human beings are at their core predators or prey? Janessa first.
No, I need to noodle on this for a minute. Yeah.
I'm still breathing, so
Nathaniel, it looks like you're up, buddy.
I'm just waiting to see how this whole thing unfolds, because it does have that like you're standing across from someone. The clock is about to hit noon, and somebody's going down. However, what happens if everybody misses? Right? What happens if like you're shooting and like gun goes this way, gun goes that way, and you guys are like, shit, we don't have any more bullets. Like now we have to figure out how to have a conversation.
No, that's silly too. I'm not missing.
It's not your fault. It's the gun is bad.
Never.
Nope, we're not missing.
Never lost.
And now there's a man charging across the field like, I'm coming for you.
Yeah, fuck it. I mean, like I'll find something. I don't need lead, but I just don't. Nope. You won't. You're not getting me there. I'm not there.
Wait,
Predator versus prey just does. I am not prey.
So is it like in
Full
the
stop.
academic studies, is it like a food chain thing?
It's all wrong.
Yeah, it's large. So the idea
Just
here
let him go.
goes as you know, mammals our size, right? Relative to our caloric intake, relative to what we have, we are shitty predators. We've got no claws, we've got no teeth, we don't run. We don't have jaguar teeth. All right, let's relax, Conan. You're not a puma.
And he's talking about Malibu Keith back there because he is in the same boat with me. Yeah.
And so what we had to do initially to pursue calories was we had to go after smaller things that we could get. Indeed, we'd be out there like hunting rabbits and things like that, and we'd be gathering, ultimately with the knowledge that there were bigger, badder predators out there. And so therefore, we have lots of, even if it's something as simple as peripheral vision, we have lots of things that allow us to be aware of the saber-toothed tiger that is stalking us. Because ultimately, when you strip us down to nothing, when it's us versus a grizzly, or it's us versus a saber-toothed tiger, we're prey.
Okay, so that's the
So
premise of this,
that's
is that
the
it's us when we're
premise.
stripped down and like facing another species.
And if you look at our brains and the fight, flight, or freeze, we would not have a flight response if we weren't prey. If we were purely predators, we would only have a fight response.
But our brain has evolved to
Donald
prey
just
on
shared-
everything.
just for everybody who's not currently watching this,
This is one to watch.
he can't even speak.
This man is on fire.
I don't know. I think I'm with you though.
I just don't. Yeah, you can't make. I cannot think of a compelling argument that gets me to a place where I actually hear what you're saying and say like, okay, yeah.
I just made it. If you can't hear it, then
You're saying you're going to strip me down to my very core.
yep.
That's fine. Give me a fucking loincloth
Yep.
and put me barefoot in whatever jail, prison, arena, whatever space. I give the grizzly bear props. I'm not fucking with him. Everything else, saber fucking tooth tiger, I still think I got a chance. Like there's just not a whole lot of strip me down to my very core. It's not, I mean, I'm not stripping you. Yeah, it just no, nuh-uh. Not
Well,
gonna-
and I
I'm
think
not going there.
The thing that I think we need to make sure that we pay attention to in this whole gig is we got big brains. And a part of what it is that we've done during the course of this season is to talk about how big our brains are and how much influence that has on what it is that we choose to do or choose not to do.
Right.
To your point, Star Wars. I'm going with it, right? Luke is in this fucking whatever cage. This massive animal is coming after him. He throws a
Rancor
bone in
monster.
its mouth.
Yep.
And then slides underneath its legs and kills this thing. I mean, he wasn't stripped down to his core, but that's pretty close. I mean, he's not in a loincloth.
If you stop and think about that scene, the first creature that falls down into the pit is, of course, Malibu Keith. What kind of species?
The big pig monster.
Gamorrean guard,
Okay, thanks.
right? Gamorrean guard falls down there. Shout out Esben and Zeph.
Oh, the guy with the green teeth.
Yeah,
Got it.
and that's Bib Fortuna. Grammarian guard is pig-like with green skin. So he's down in the pit, and the rancor comes out, and the Grammarian guard screams. And the reason why he screams, and we all in the studio in the movie theater, maybe except for Donald, we're like, yeah, that scream makes sense, because in that moment, the Gamorrean guard is prey. Now, Luke, being the highly trained warrior that he is
Big brain.
down there. And while he is fearful, because he recognizes that he is prey, he masters his fear and says, okay, let me see if I can pivot from being the prey that I am to the predator that I need to be.
Here's where I think this goes sideways.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. You can just shut the episode off now or fast forward to the next one. I believe I've answered this comprehensively.
As the Grammarian guard is falling, he's worried.
Appropriately so. Yeah.
As Donald Malloy is falling, he's thinking about what he's going to do when he hits the ground.
Okay.
I want this thing. I want it.
I just don't see why are predator and prey like mutually exclusive. Are we not both? Can we be both?
See, and I think that's fantastic. I would go with that in 100%.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But you said something that I think you should keep for the play, which is in pursuit of calories. Like that's a good tagline.
Oh, that's the title of the
Or
play?
title,
In Pursuit
maybe.
of Calories?
That, I love that. I'll
Okay.
give that.
We can all relate to that too.
Done.
'Cause we're always hungry.
Next play.
Because don't get me wrong, I'm fine with going down, but I'm going to put up a fight.
Okay.
And then once I put up the fight, that I'm not gonna lie, man. If I still have a eyeball, I'm gonna wink at that fucker who just won.
Wait a minute.
And be like, you know what? You're a badass. Thank you for that fight.
What about it's like Monty Python. It's the night. It's just a flesh wound.
That's right.
Yeah. Fourth pitch.
Hashtag TM.
All right. Angela Morera came on the pod and shared, among many other brilliant things, the interactive professional development workshops she does to give educators a window into what it's like to be dyslexic, have ADHD, just to be on the neurodiversity spectrum. And I would be really excited to take it one step further and create an interactive PD or even a PD performance where you get to really live the experience of particularly students who are navigating your classroom. What do you think? Is there something there?
I do.
Oh, sorry. PD is professional development.
So every year, I'm traditionally asked to do a presentation on ADHD, and that's what I do. My favorite one was, so I go in early.
And who are you doing this presentation for?
Staff, just folks at the university.
Okay.
So I'm in a room, and so I go in early, and I put a speaker in the back of the room that nobody knows is there, with either a timer or it's going to go off at some point, or like suddenly there's going to be a voice in the back of your head that you didn't know was going to be there.
Oh, that's cool.
Ooh.
Or I've done one where, you know, the meditation balls
Yeah.
with the ringing in them.
Balls, yeah.
Oh.
I'll open with
Lawrence Fishburne, Boys in the Hood.
Right. I'll open with having a conversation with an entire room full of people with the loudest ones that I own. So it's just like, and I'm talking about ADHD right now. And everybody's like, I can't hear you. I'm like,
Perfect.
yeah,
I love that.
that's the whole point. They're like,
How-
that's really distracting.
How could then would you bring in
A fog machine.
a fog machine? Oh, that's interesting.
That could
Brain
work for sure.
fog.
That is interesting.
Well, see, I disagree with the brain fog.
Oh, okay.
It's not foggy. Like it's very clear.
Well, but depression can give you a brain fog, or,
Sure.
or PTSD can give you a brain fog.
That piece I'll go with.
Okay.
However, with the ADHD piece, for me, it's much more, you hear everything. And I'm an auditory person, so I appreciate that. And one of the stories that I will oftentimes tell is that my boys and I, we camp a lot. And so we have this never-ending game of hide and seek. So the boys will just disappear when we're
In
out
the woods.
in the woods. Correct. And then they're always annoyed when I find them. And they're like, Dad, how did you find us? I'm like, well, I heard you when you left. Right? It's not, there's no fog in that. It's that I know that my son right now is climbing a tree 20 feet away from me and hiding in the woods. And there's nothing else out there except for us. Because we're, just for the sake of clarity, like we're not doing RV park. Like when we go camping, we're like out in the middle of nowhere. So when my kids leave, I know they leave, right? And as quiet as they want to be, doesn't matter. So I think it's a little different for me.
I love the idea of moving the goalposts. And so I'm imagining also like teaching something, but then like slowly just walking out of the room. Sort of like that fog machine aspect, where like you're talking, but someone is slowly lowering the mic and lowering the lights.
Yeah. So it's giving them the experience. It's like POV for ADHD.
Yes.
I love it.
Or any of them. the metaphor we had that Angela shared for dyslexia was it's like training to swim, and then everybody jumps in the pool and they're swimming in water, and your lane is honey.
And I loved that. I'm totally taking that. Thank
Oh,
you,
that's
Angela.
good.
Where like I know what the technique is,
Right.
I know what the goal is. I want it just as bad as everybody else. I'm swimming in honey.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Done. Next.
Cool.
Let's roll. Speaking of fog, okay. So I had this idea. This is a very half-baked one, but I'm really intrigued by it. And that is stage makeup that is being either applied or removed over the course of the one act, so that the central character is changing before our eyes and becoming a different person. And it's not, the people applying the makeup are not seen or acknowledged by anybody, but it's just how you would interact with somebody if their appearance and or maybe even their manner was just slowly changing, what that would be like.
So the non-depressed people, how they're interacting with the depressed person.
I don't know. I don't even know if this is a depression one, but it's just, I'm really intrigued by, I feel like stage makeup is usually something that is applied backstage and we don't see, but obviously it's in service of transformation.
Right.
And so I then wonder what would happen if an audience was watching that transformative process happen, but out in front. And I wonder if that would just be a metaphor for something.
So there's this, and I did this work a long time ago. It's not recent, but I'd have a client kind of, do the little paddle that would show like the face, like the emotion on the paddle. And I would have them pick one, right? And to show me what they were that day.
Oh.
And at one point, this person was depressed for a long period of time, and it was only picking that paddle, right? And I said, so we're going to try something different. Grabbed the paddle that had the biggest smile possible. And I said, so if I just put that in front of you, and we just kept on putting that in front of you, and that's all people could see, and that's all you tried to do, at some point, would you eventually crack the smile as well? And so it's not face paint, right? But it's this person kind of, and it's fake it till you make it kind of stuff.
Right.
And and so the lesson I was trying to convey was that if you had that smile, what would you do? And if you did that for a long enough period of time, would that support a healthier lifestyle? Something that you might learn to crack the smile.
That's interesting.
Well, it goes to imposter syndrome.
100%. Yeah.
It reminds me of a quote that I heard recently. It's only delusional until it's done. And I loved that, which was like, believe in what you're doing. And when it's made, then people will believe you.
Yeah, it's funny because Tiffany and I talk about this all the time because I'm a grandiose thinker. Like, I can't help it. It's just how I process. And so I'll come to her and I'm like, okay, I have this idea. And she's like, oh boy. And then we'll struggle with some ideas. And then eventually we come up with this trauma presentation and trauma challenge and these other kinds of things. But it's exactly that, right? It's delusional until it happens. Mm-hmm. It just takes the work, right?
So I think one of the things that's an interesting distinction here is what you guys are describing is having ownership over it. I feel like when people talk about like, oh, I have to be fake, right? I have to pretend.
Right. That's different.
And I think it's different because in that situation, you're doing it for somebody else.
Are you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think so. So if you're
go either way, yeah.
Well, I think we keep ourselves safe on purpose. Like that, we're going back to the big brain, right? Like we're doing something on purpose. There's a reason that you're presenting in that way. And as the kid who's sitting in the classroom, who knows that I'm supposed to be able to give an answer, and I don't know what's going on in the classroom, I'm going to present like, oh, hold on, give me a second. And then I'm going to read the room, whether it's situational awareness or whether it's just me reading the room, and I'm going to give you an answer. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be good enough for that person to leave me alone. Now, am I doing right? It's the workaround. Am I doing that for me, 100%.
Well, but if you think about like a, I don't know why my mind is going to this, but like a Marilyn Monroe, right? Marilyn wasn't smiling for her. She was smiling for her audience.
Right, but ultimately for her. I get what, yeah, it always comes back to you and your survival.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But was she smiling? Was she doing it for her because she was like, I want Marilyn to be happy? Or was she doing it for her because it was like, I want Marilyn to be accepted and loved by these people?
So she will be happy.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
you're
think
freaking me out. See, this is why you're here, Janessa, is that nothing's ever easy with you. Such a pain in the...
It's so simple. I bring the simple syrup, remember?
Yeah.
simple syrup. I love it.
Simple syrup.
Hashtag TM.
Conscious or unconscious? That's the question.
Was it situation normal? All...
Situation awareness. What?
No, situation normal, right?
I
All
have no
fucked
idea
up.
what you're talking about.
Snafu.
Oh.
What?
Snafu stands for situation normal, all fucked up,
Oh.
right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But what you're describing is that stop trying to make it a sort of a duality of complicated. Instead, it's simply everything.
I'm all about reconciling duality.
Right? She's the
Yeah.
balance within the yin.
There you
The
go.
yin and the yang.
Oh shit!
Oh my
What's
gosh.
going on here?
Not today, Pat
and the
Padel. We gotta go
Floating.
next idea.
Floating here.
Triggers.
Cool.
I just got triggered there.
Did you?
No.
I didn't think so.
No, he ate his trigger. He hunted his trigger down. He's a predator.
Yeah.
Janessa, Donald, thank you for putting that deep in the microphone, bro. Donald introduced
Oh my goodness, that was great.
a notion of triggers that really resonated with me. And I'm curious if, as an actress, when you're either getting into a character or you're just reflecting as you do about whatever you're headed for, the idea of triggers being very connected to the five senses.
Yeah.
And so I'm really intrigued by,
That's a wonderful face right there.
yeah, it's true.
I have face Tourette's. You're going to know how I feel. Was it puzzled?
No,
It was.
yeah, I think you looked at me like, yeah, Lemire, grow up.
Curious.
Of course it's
curious.
five
Maybe
senses.
a little bit of that. But no, yeah, that's true. I would agree. Is that what you're asking? If
Yeah,
agree?
I was just asking if you think that would make a good one act to explore the five senses. If you've seen performance pieces that explore the senses, or just what you guys make of watching somebody work through taste on stage. I don't know. I think there's something there.
This is one of those PDs, professional developments, where, and I'm going to ostracize a huge community of people at this point, but it's where they give you the grape and the task is to experience the grape
Yeah.
or the raisin or the whatever thing it is.
Yep.
And the first time it happened, I was like, okay, that was entertaining. Every time that I've had that professional development since then, it's like, oh, we're doing that again. It's experience this sensation only, right? Like experience the raisin, the texture, the taste, how it feels as you put it into your mouth, as you hold the raisin. And at the same time, my ADHD brain is like, oh my God.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable.
Oh my goodness. I'm watching the birds outside. I'm looking at the reflection through the mirror, watching the sunset. Like you're asking me to experience a sensation. My brain is like,
Yeah, I got 6 tornadoes going on in my
oh
head.
my goodness.
But that's interesting that demands that you simplify it, or not simple, that's the wrong word. That demand that you focus down on that one thing. I feel like that, then all of a sudden you're 7 years old in class again. You're like,
Yeah, except for I'm not. Right. Right. And then that's the rub.
Yeah.
Right. Is like you're asking me to focus on one. This is sit still. If you just sit still and focus, you'd be fine. Well, that's not gonna happen.
Works for 10 seconds.
Right? Like if I could focus, I could fly.
Yeah.
Neither of those two things are options.
I love this. Done. Next. I feel like we nailed that one. All right. We've got 4 more. We're going to rapid fire 2 of them and dig into the last 2. So on our very first pod, we talked about this idea of the cave and or the hole. And Malloy, you said that when someone is down in that hole, whatever that hole is, whether it's addiction or depression or grappling with trauma, you said you'd go down in the hole with them.
Well, he started in the hole with them.
That's right. But you're not going to carry them out.
No, not carrying them, not pushing them, not nothing. I'll have that conversation with them and start to climb up. If they say like, no, you can't go, I'll be like, but I'm going to go. Like if you want to come up, you should do the same thing. Yeah. And that's straightforward. It's there was another analogy to this, and I thought it was also helpful was I was a lifeguard when I was growing up. And I remember one of the first things they train you in life when you're lifeguarding is that if somebody's grabbing a hold of you, feel free to knock them out, get away from them because they will take you down, right? This person has to let you put your arm around them and pull them to safety. And this is the same exact thing.
Yeah, and I think that's in some ways that's a piece of the clinical experience. Like you can't make someone do something they're not ready to do.
Right.
Right. If you don't want to be engaged in the process of understanding how your learning is different, then I'm not your guy.
Yeah.
Right. And if what I'm consistently saying to you is, hey, let's figure this out. And one of the things I say all the time is like, I don't give a shit how you do it. We just got to figure out how you do it.
Yeah.
And the expectation is that you have the agency to be able to figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Or you can continue to say, oh my goodness, I have to sit still and focus.
Janessa, you're nodding.
Yeah, I totally agree.
There's a part of this that's like if you so let's say I carry this guy up there, right? Not only am I like totally spent at this point,
Absolutely exhausted.
and this dude's like, oh, this is cool, and he falls back in, and it's like, oh shit, now I have to go back down there and get him, right? So we didn't progress, we didn't accomplish, we didn't do anything because that person needs to figure it out on their own, and that takes a certain amount of strategy and planning and all these kinds of things.
Now, to be fair though, not on their own. You are a clinician. You do make sure that people are not alone in this journey.
Well, no, not at all. I'm there. They can still choose to leave that room and be all by themselves.
Well, and this is the thing about it. Like, yes, when you work with someone clinically, you're working with them. However, it is my responsibility to make sure that they're given the tools that they need to be able to move forward.
Okay.
Right? Like I can't walk around with a rucksack with all of your tools and just hand them to you whenever you need them.
Right. It's always going to come down to the individual. It's like the Maryland thing. Like it comes back to you, and you're right. You have 100% of the agency. So you can go down in the hole with somebody and you can empathize, be there with them, but it's up to them to make that perspective shift to realize they're not in a hole. It's just blinders from whatever they've got going on.
So I
Oh wait, this is interesting. I'm just thinking about staging this, and I think there's something very compelling about maybe through lighting or through set pieces or also through the narrative where the person is convinced they're in a hole, and the audience indeed is convinced they're in a hole. And it could be really interesting if the hole dissipates as
you just light the stage. Because tunnel vision, like when you're depressed or, what have you.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's fascinating too, because as a soldier being put into a scenario, we do it in 0 dark 30 in the morning, right? So there's often times when we're out there and it is super dark. We're moving under night vision goggles. And it's funny because we typically feel like we're in one place and then the sun comes up and we're like, okay, now I can see everything. Right. And that's,
oh man.
And it's fascinating, right? You can start to recognize whether you're in a really good place or not. I mean, you got a map to go off of, but when it's really dark out.
What if the whole thing was staged just with headlamps?
had this vision of like,
That's interesting.
there's like a single light that like shines on this one thing that you need that you can't see because you're in the hole. There's like a little spotlight on a key or whatever random thing, and you're in the hole, but you can't see the key, but it's there. And in order for you to get to the key that opens up whatever insight you need, you have to find the key.
That's cool. I pictured it as like there's a person like spotlit, just one follow spot on stage, and like that's their whole. But then like it gets bigger and bigger, and you know people can go in and out of it. But like actually, there's a world out here. Like just shift your focus, man.
Oh,
I like that.
there's a world out here. Next, there's a world out here. That's the title.
TM.
Done. All right. And actually, in the interest of time, just because I really want to be able to get into these last two, I'm just going to say, Janessa, you mentioned having worked the crisis line at a peer support center, and I just think that doing a show that is focused on the lives of the workers on the crisis line and having the protagonist, it be their first day, and there being the ecosystem of that call center. Can you just share, like, just describing?
It's really interesting, yeah. Because when it's your first day, like, first of all, you're so nervous you're gonna like fuck somebody up more who calls and not say the right thing, and like you're nervous when the phone rings, and it automatically picks up, like it just turns it on, and you gotta go. But there is something also really funny about like the culture there, because you'll see somebody who's been there for a long time, like a crisis clinician, master level, whatever, like eating her mac and cheese, being like, yeah, so how long have you wanted to kill yourself? Cool. Like just, you know, totally chill. Some people have a bunch of crystals on their desk to protect their energy so they don't take it all home with them. Sometimes like you don't want to laugh, but you're laughing, or, you know, you're trying to like communicate with other people on the phone, or they'll be like, jump in and listen to this call, like help me out.
that happens?
It's so, yeah, it's fun. It's fascinating.
Oh, wow.
But it's like, nobody who goes in there expects to work there for too long, because it is heavy, right? So it's like a tour. You know, you got to go and you do your best, and then you're done.
So this has been something that we've been talking about throughout the season, of civilians using military lingo. So I'm curious.
Well, and here's what I think.
Yeah.
Tell me what you were talking about when you said it's like a tour.
Well, that was something that people often said there, in that nobody was expected to stay there for more than maybe, 6 months, a year, because it was heavy, and they'd be like, okay, I did the best I can, but it's kind of like, this is hard work to do every day, day in and day out. But there were a couple of what we would call veterans who would be there for years and years, and they were like the OGs and the best. And if you had somebody going through something really critical, like in the moment, we'd send them over to them.
Okay, thank you.
Donald, what do you think, man?
Love it.
That's it. That's all we get.
Is that true?
Well, so it goes.
He can't lie. It's not in his. He's not prey, and he's not a liar. It's
Okay.
getting you get it from him.
So the one piece that I really love about it, and this is something that I think we talked about a little bit on one of the prior episodes, is I think it's far better for people to connect than not to connect. And so when we have the Tom Brady's throwing out like it's like a deployment, and we were watching a kitchen show, right? In the kitchen show, and they were like, "Oh yeah, the battalion," and I'm thinking like, that's great. So like you have a frame of reference that connects you with like this mentality. Great. A lot of veterans are going to be like, "Well, you don't get to use those terms," right? And I'm thinking like, come on, guys, like, come on, really? Like everybody should be able to use these terms in some way, shape, or form. And I think this is said for mimicking people, right? It's a highest form of flattery or whatever else. Feel flattered, right? Why disconnect? Feel flattered. It's a mentality. It's a design that people use in their heads to describe something that absolutely 100% makes sense. If it didn't make sense, you wouldn't have used it. And when you said it, we all knew what you were talking about.
Right.
So to me, it just makes sense.
And that relates to how it works on a crisis line with like peer support people, for example. Like when somebody who was in the military and had trauma called in, like I haven't had that experience, but when you boil it down to the core emotions that they felt, like I've had those experiences. And
trauma is trauma.
Yeah.
Is trauma.
Everyone
is
has experienced pain and suffering.
Yep.
That's right.
It's across the board.
Yeah.
All right. On that, flowing into pitch number 9, 2 to go. This pitch is called Ghost Story. And what I'm imagining is a high concept piece. The characters.
Your voice has changed.
Well, this has been a heavy one for me to I've already started framing it out a little bit. And the characters are adults, and a woman is going through her day, and she is visited by what she experiences as the ghost of a little girl. And it ends up appearing and using a lot of tropes of a ghost story. And then eventually we come to understand that the ghost is her childhood trauma and what she experienced. And it's about her reconnecting with this ghost and making peace with and healing with the ghost. And I think there's something there, and I'm curious what you all think.
I wonder if it's because we know each other or we're already like talking about it in this space. But as soon as you said there was a little girl ghost, I was like, it's her.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%.
But maybe that's okay that we know that going in, right? I don't know.
Well, I immediately think of this. So if you guys have ever seen it, to me, it's wildly impactful. But they have the Vietnam veteran wall, and a guy walks up and he puts his hand on it, and you see the reflection of it. And it's all his buddies from Vietnam that are on the other side as a reflection.
Yep.
And to me, it's just like, I mean, Vietnam veterans, there's some that I know that will not and cannot go to that wall or even the traveling wall because it holds their friends in that wall, right? So I think about that as soon as you bring it up.
First thing that popped in my head was how long does it take you to cry?
Yep.
Yeah, man. And a line that I thought of, and I don't know, this may be a darling that I ultimately kill and it doesn't end up in the final piece, but I had a moment where the woman says to the ghost, well, you can't be me. You don't look like me. And the ghost says, well, you've only ever seen yourself in a mirror. And there was something about the idea that it's very hard for us to actually really see ourselves.
Why? And to look yourself in the mirror and say, I love you.
That's exactly where I was going.
Wow.
With that.
All right.
Plus by APN is an official sponsor of the Harder Than Healing podcast. Plus by APN treats the root causes of mental health issues with neurotechnology like deep TMS, ketamine-assisted therapy, and stellate ganglion blocks, so you can get relief from symptoms and find long-term healing. Schedule a free consultation and find your treatment match at plusapn.com. That's PLUSAPN.com.
All right, here we go. All right, so ghost story. We're going to lock that in. Last one. This is one that hit me on the drive up. All Points North has a really remarkable campus. It feels like you're going to a destination of healing, like you're going up the mountain to see the Oracle. And I'm heading up the mountain, and I was thinking about when, we had Kyle on, and Kyle was talking about what it's like from going to having 15,000 fans screaming your name and millions of people cheering for you, and then it's gone, right? And so I imagined a piece that opens on, I was imagining it's like an entertainer, like a singer, right? And the singer's like sitting on a couch and being interviewed by a couple people who have notebooks, and they're like, oh, tell me about this, tell me about that, this must have been amazing. And we eventually figure out that this singer had a really big hit back in the day and ultimately fell into obscurity and is now in a rehab treatment facility. And the people who were sitting on the couch were just also fellow patients there who happened to be fans of his, but he's really having a hard time with his healing process because he really says, like, you guys have no idea what it's like to have been me. Like, you have no idea what it's like to go into an arena and 90,000 people who don't even speak English are screaming every words of your lyrics because you're doing your concert in Buenos Aires or wherever. And, it's like, you guys have no idea what it's like to be on the cover of magazines. Like, I'm a one of one, baby. So, like, you think you can heal me? You can't heal me. You're a clinician. You have no idea what my life is like.
That's interesting.
But ultimately, he gets paired up in a group setting or something like that with a woman, and they're initially very adversarial. And they start finding some what appear to be secondary connections. And he doesn't know why the woman's in there. And he doesn't know because he doesn't care. Because again, he's one of one. What the hell could she possibly know? And eventually he's on his high horse and he's talking about he's one of one. And the woman finally says, my daughter was a one of one. and she's gone. And I'm here now. Because I lost my one of one. So everybody's a one-on-one. You have to fucking grow up.
That's good. I like that.
I think there's some. What do you guys think?
I like it. I think you should run with that one.
Okay.
It's got the shared experience piece.
Very
Yeah.
much so.
You know what? It's funny because I don't know if you saw John Mulaney's last stand-up.
Yeah.
When he talked about his rehab experience,
Yep.
and he was in their group, and he's like, "Hi, I'm John M," and nobody knew who he was, and he was like, "What the fuck?" And he was like a little like annoyed by it, and like left a magazine out like on the table.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there's something there.
Yeah, because I think but
so.
the thing that we can all relate to, I think, is like that post-expansion contraction. Like you have like a really great fun experience and you feel like shit the next day and you wonder why.
Right.
It's because like, you know, you were riding so high and that was great. And then to go back.
And
is
I think what I'm imagining for this woman was like, for her, being a mother to this daughter was amazing, was just amazing. And then it was taken from her.
Yeah, I haven't heard a story like that.
Okay.
That's good.
I like that one.
All right.
Well, and I think it touches on so many pieces that we've been trying to get to around connection and trauma is trauma. And, you know, everyone has experienced suffering on some level, right? And for you to be that one of one and to have your identity be so clearly wrapped up in being that one
Yeah.
and the idea that it's been taken away,
Yeah.
okay, maybe.
Okay.
So I got to bring it up just because it keeps running circles in my head. I don't normally tell people that I have a background in anything really. I mean, I just show up as a clinician. But I had a veteran that came in and never really asked me anything about myself, which is fine. But he started going to his story, and it was this, it was this, it was this, and it was military trauma, right? He'd gotten a mortar that hit close to him, and caused some significant damage, and blah blah blah. And we're going forward, and he was really struggling with that piece. And at some point, he was just like, I just don't know if anybody can hold this. Like, who can hold this? And I don't remember exactly how it happened, but he ended up Googling either my name or something for the trauma challenge or something. And he read oh, no, it was for your ADHD conference. And he read my bio, and he was like, you're a fucking Ranger? And I was like, no, not actually. I'm special forces guy. He's like, you're what? And I was like, why is that crazy to you? He's like, you never tell me any of this shit. He's like, my trauma doesn't even come close to yours. And I was thinking like, here we go, right? Trauma is trauma is trauma.
Right.
Why didn't you tell me? And I was like, I'm more worried about your story than I am about mine. And after that, it was just like, well, how can we do this? I can't be sad or depressed or whatever anymore because I know your story now. How can I possibly complain? And I was like, oh, this is cool. I don't even have to do shit. But at the same extent, I was thinking to myself, like, okay, right, but this is still your journey, right? So yeah,
It's the piece of, even though our stories are different, they're still the same. Like, we share a common thread of humanity, right? And there's this piece that, like, the through line is, how do we connect with each other?
Right.
Like, how do we do that in a way that's authentic and genuine? And what is it that all of a sudden, because you're a Green Beret, like, and I'm sitting in the grass, with my toes in the grass because I'm like, let me connect with the earth. Like, how did we connect?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what's the through line? And it's connection. It's how do we foster that connection?
See, non-duality, baby.
Looking for the connection, I think, is important.
Yeah. We're very like oriented to either or thinking.
Absolutely.
And like things being mutually exclusive when it's like, no, dude, it's both and. Like nobody has a patent, no TM on the human experience.
Right? It's the third option.
Yeah. It's
Shout
like,
out, hashtag TM.
Oh man,
yeah.
it has been so great, Janessa, having you on the show.
Thanks for having me. It has been fun. I love seeing the weird shit you get up to. And being a part of it. It's wonderful. No, this is really good stuff.
Okay, Malibu Keith asked, and a great question for an actress and artist, Janessa, which of these ideas do you see yourself being intrigued to?
I like one of one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that.
Oh, dude, now I can totally see you. Man,
As the mother.
seriously.
As the mother who lost a one of one?
Yeah.
Okay.
You would or this were you seeing yourself as a singer?
No, I just didn't know if I was old enough to play the mother, because if she had like a grown adult one of one who had passed, but
No, I was definitely thinking of this was a woman who for 4 or 5 years was in her bliss being a mom. And then
I see.
then lost her
yeah.
child. Okay.
Yeah. I like the 5 senses thing too. I'm just a very sensory person.
Yeah.
I think that'd be fun, but yeah, there's good stuff there.
Okay. Well, this is it. Listeners, thank you for coming on this journey with us. It has been amazing. You guys
Wildly intense.
Yeah, seriously.
That was intense. Okay.
No, that was hardcore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was hardcore.
You guys want to I don't know. You guys want to put a cherry on top of this is season 1. This is it. Episode 10, Scenes from the Rat Park. Closing thoughts? And anybody?
It's obviously it's great to share the space with you. And the closing thought is I don't know what the result of this looks like. What I do know is that it feels very familiar to me in that we've had conversations that I think a lot of folks have had or want to have. And for whatever reason, we have access to like the full sense of like this is what it is. This is what it's like to be vulnerable and to be scared and to be happy and to connect with other folks. And I guess my hope is that we on some level provided access to some freedom for folks.
Yeah, I think I just hope this provides some space for those who are thinking and wanting introspection, wanting some insight, and now they feel connected because we do that in this room, right? And so the more connected we can be, I think the better. So I appreciate you guys being able to do that, and thanks for coming on. It was a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, it was great to talk to you guys.
Super fun to wrap up the season like this. It wasn't what I expected, but I really enjoyed like the process of like this is what we've done. Like this is the process, and this is what it looks like in a different way.
And it wasn't so fucking heavy.
Right.
Thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome.
That was pretty cool.
All right. Well, with that, we'll always have resources for you in the show notes. We'll always have resources here. And the reason why we'll always have resources here at Harder Than Healing is because, like we always say, you're worth it. You are worth the healing.
Hi, my name is Watika Ling, and I am the CEO of Warrior Now. And I want to thank you for listening to Harder Than Healing, produced in partnership with All Points North and Warrior Now. This podcast is recorded on the APN campus in Edwards, Colorado. Warrior Now is a nonprofit organization that provides veterans a whole health approach through peer-to-peer services. For more information, you can contact us at info@warriornow.org or pod@harderthanhealing.com. You can also find us on all social media platforms at Warrior Now. Like, share, or subscribe for new episodes. Thank you.